All right, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2026 Principles First Summit. It is always a distinct honor, really, to start this weekend, which to me is one of the best weekends of the year, quite frankly. It's just such a joy and energizing to see all of you in this room. It's a grassroots organization. People come from all over the country. Some of you have flown here from far distances. Some have driven overnight. But all of you have made a choice today to be in this room rather than somewhere more comfortable, more easy than this. And that choice alone says something important about who you are and what you believe. And whether this is your first summit or your sixth, we want you to know today that you have found your people. We started this summit because we believed that principled leadership and the ideas that make America America were under assault, and that people needed to stand up and start to say so out loud. And we have, and we will. And that theme of America 250, that means something different this year. Because this year, we're not just fighting for the soul of a party or the integrity of an institution or even the outcome of a single election. We gather this year in the 250th year of our nation, and so I hope you feel the sense that I do, that it seems that history is looking at us this year more than other years. And so I think the theme this year, this moment, asks us to do something harder over the series of conversations that we're about to have, both today and tomorrow. It asks us, I think, to lift our eyes from the immediate chaos around us to look at the full arc of our country, where we came from, what actually made us great, and what kind of nation we intend to be in the decades ahead. I've been thinking a lot lately about John F. Kennedy's 1962 speech at Rice University. I think everyone remembers the famous line in that speech about going to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. But earlier in that address, Kennedy does something that I think is pretty remarkable. He compresses the entire span of recorded human history into just 50 years. Okay? So if all of human civilization, he says, took place in just 50 years, then we only recently learned to write. Printing was invented just 2 years ago. Steam engines appeared last year. Penicillin, the airplane, nuclear weapons, space travel, all of them came practically in the last 2 weeks. His point was that the future doesn't arrive at a steady pace or slowly. It compounds, it surprises, it demands more of us than we expect. Now, roll forward that metaphor for 2026, and Kennedy's vision almost undersells what we face as a country today. The smartphone would have appeared in the last few days. Social media reshaped global politics in the last just 48 hours, and sometime in just the last few seconds. We invented systems that can write, reason, code, diagnose disease, compose music, pass the bar exam. And we haven't even really paused to understand what is happening. The pace of change that Kennedy warned us about has not merely continued, it has gone exponential. We're living in a period of technological transformation that is, by almost any measure, without precedent, not just in the United States, but in all of human history. So we live in a time and a country today that is bigger than Donald Trump. It is much bigger. And we leaders in this room need to understand that the moment we are living in is not a moment that is defined by Donald Trump. It is defined by us and the choices that we are going to make as a nation. Because as Trump and our supposed leaders, they draw our attention on a daily basis to everything but those challenges. They draw our attention to their personalities, vendettas, and performative antics. And while they have done that, America's infrastructure has fallen to 13th globally. While we were busy alienating our allies because they did not give us the Nobel Peace Prize, our kids fell to the middle of the pack among developed nations in science and math education outcomes. These are not abstract statistics. They are real-world costs of a country that has been distracted for far too long from its own future, from the future of the people in this room, our kids, and our families. That has been the cost of the last 10 years of our politics. And unfortunately, that is by design. The chief bet being made by China, by Russia, by every authoritarian regime watching us right now is that American democracy has become too chaotic, too self-referential, too divided, too consumed by internal theatrics to focus on a singular goal and see it through. We cannot let them be right about that. And to prove them wrong, to answer that challenge, starts by reminding ourselves what actually makes America great. Not great in a bumper sticker sense, not great as a political slogan, but great in the deep, durable, historical sense that has made this country the most consequential and enduring democracy in human history. It isn't our geography, it isn't our luck or resources, it isn't even our military might, and we should say, for folks who get it confused, that it certainly isn't our race. What has made America great is the institutional architecture the founders built, and our repeated, if imperfect, willingness to live up to it. It's the separation of powers, the rule of law, a free press, the peaceful transfer of power, the idea radical in 1776 and radical still in much of the world today that government derives its legitimacy from the consent of the governed, not the will of the strong man. It is the capacity which we have demonstrated over 250 years to course correct, to acknowledge the gap between our ideals and our reality, and then to do the slow, hard, incremental work of closing that gap. We didn't get it right on slavery. We didn't get it right on civil rights. We didn't get it right on a number of things, but we had, and we preserved the institutions through which a free people keep demanding better of themselves. That is the miracle of the American experiment that we all share in. Not that we are perfect, but that we have all built something capable of self-correction, self-fulfillment. And today I believe, sober as I am about the dangers of this moment, that we are at one of those inflection points, a point where we can choose to go this way or that, to self-correct from the dangers that we have put ourselves in front of. But course corrections don't happen on their own. They require people who are paying attention and who are willing to fight hard when it is difficult, when it takes effort and energy. People who will fight, go the extra inch to make sure that we go the right direction. That is what this Principles First room is about. So if those are the foundations, institutions, rule of law, the capacity for self-correction, what does America need to commit itself to now to lead in the decades ahead, to correct and go in a better direction? First, we have to be honest, as Kennedy knew, about the scale of the technological changes in front of us. This is not a niche policy question for tech committees in Congress. Artificial intelligence is going to touch every sector of the American economy: healthcare, education, manufacturing, national security. It's all coming. And right now, the people responsible for shaping our response to that challenge spend most of their bandwidth on performative outrage and culture war theater. None of that helps or answers the challenge, and that has to change. Second, we have to be honest. I wish I could stand here today and tell you that at 250, America's institutions were strong and durable and in keeping with the founders' vision of what they should have been, but they are weakened and they are weak. Not because Americans suddenly became worse people, but because the incentives that once moderated behavior in Congress, in the executive branch, in the media, in our civic life have eroded. Congress has ceded authority while avoiding responsibility. Executive power has expanded with diminished accountability. And the public square is not even recognizable. It has completely been reoriented around outrage rather than deliberation. You cannot restore a republic at this late hour by electing better individuals into broken structures, though better individuals we definitely need. You have to fix the structures, the incentives. That is unglamorous work. It is hard work. It happens in back rooms. You do not always see it on TV or in sound bites. But that is the work that endures, and that is important. We have to put an importance on that type of leadership in this country again. And lastly, we have to recommit to America's role in the world. I know it can be challenging, but the isolationist temptation, the idea that America can just pull up stakes, tend to its own garden, let the rest of the world sort itself out, is not a new one. We had it before World War I. We had it before World War II, and history's verdicts on those choices are not ambiguous. When the United States retreats, when the world does not become more peaceful, it becomes more dangerous. Authoritarians fill that vacuum. Our allies lose faith, our adversaries gain confidence, and eventually, we pay a far higher price for our disengagement than the price we would have paid for our leadership. And so the world is watching us right now as we confront these choices, not to see which party wins the next election, although that is important, to see whether American democracy still has the seriousness of purpose to address these challenges. I think that question is out, and it's not clear how we're going to answer that question. In 1962, Kennedy closed his speech by saying that space was out there and that we were going to climb it. It was a declaration of agency. It was a refusal to let the difficulty of a challenge become an excuse for standing still. That spirit, that can-do America, is not an artifact of a different era. It is the most American thing that there is. It's the tradition of the Revolution, which was won against longer odds than the Patriots had any right to believe they could beat. It is the tradition of the Union soldiers at Gettysburg and those NASA astronauts that put man on the moon far earlier than Kennedy had even thought that we could do it. It is what has brought us through every challenge that we have faced. And we are in a genuine crisis right now. We should be clear-eyed about the crisis that we face. Not because of one party in power or because one man in one office, although certainly that has contributed to the crisis that we face. We are in a genuine crisis because the moment we are in, historically, technologically, geopolitically, that moment is demanding more of us than our politics seems currently capable of delivering. That gap, the gap between the seriousness of the challenges that we face and the seriousness of our response, that gap is the crisis, the very real crisis for the country that we love. And closing that gap is the work of everyone in this room. That is what Principles First is dedicated to doing and what the American people urgently need to be committed to doing. So that is why we're here this weekend. Not to fawn over a speaker or signal our tribal loyalties to each other. That is not the purpose of this gathering. There are other gatherings where you can go if that is what you are looking for. We are here because we believe that principled leadership still matters, that principled leadership and ideas are what are going to pull us out of this crisis, that the question of what kind of republic we are going to be is still an open one, and that the answer depends, at least in part, on whether people like us, people like you, continue to show up and expect and demand that we can be better than what we have shown. 250 years ago this year, men who knew that they were probably going to hang for what they were doing signed their names to a document that said all of this, all of the overcoming of challenges, all of the self-correction, all of the getting through the differences that we have among ourselves, that all of that was possible. They weren't naive to the dangers that they faced. They knew they faced death, but they took the pen and they signed the document anyway. Our job, your job, the job of everyone in this room and in other rooms around the country is to be worthy of the great experiment and project that they started 250 years ago. That is the work. I hope we do the work. I look forward to doing that work with all of you. These discussions this weekend and the work that we will do after these discussions in dinners and gatherings around the country that we do, making sure that people understand the importance of these principles and the real crisis that the country faces. That is the work that is going to make sure that we go down the right path instead of the wrong one at this critical moment in our history. So with that, let's get to work. Thank you for being here, and welcome to the 2026 Principles First Summit.